You show up at my door after midnight and I'm supposed to just let you in? For what, a noise complaint that never happened?
Man, we're just following up on a call. I need to make sure everyone's safe inside, that's all.
Everyone
You're
is
looking
fine.
at them. I'm not inviting half.
The knock is sharp, not frantic, not polite. Authoritative. Red and blue lights wash across a quiet suburban street, bouncing off parked cars, trimmed hedges, and the white siding of a modest home. Crickets fall silent as if the night itself senses something is wrong. A porch light hums faintly. The air smells of freshly cut grass. Warm. Ordinary. The kind of night nothing is supposed to happen. Inside the house. Footsteps approach the door. It opens. A black woman stands in the doorway. Barefoot. Wearing a dark cardigan over a white blouse. One hand rests lightly against the doorframe. Her posture is relaxed. But her eyes are alert. Measuring. Calm in a way that feels deliberate. Two police officers stand on the walkway. "Ma'am." One of them says, his voice flat and rehearsed, "Step outside and show me your identification." The words land heavily, carried by the flashing lights behind him, framed as a command rather than a question. The woman does not move. "Officer." She replies evenly, "Before I do anything, can you explain why you're demanding my ID while I'm standing inside my own home?" The officers exchange a glance. One shifts his weight. The other lets his hand hover close to his belt, not touching it, but close enough to signal readiness. "We received a call." The first officer says, "You match the description. Step outside." The woman remains where she is. She looks past them briefly. Down the street. A curtain moves in a nearby house. A phone screen glows faintly from a driveway across the road. "What crime are you investigating?" she asks. The question is calm, precise, and it changes the tone of the night. The officer straightens. "Ma'am, this is a lawful order," he says. "If you refuse, you could be detained." A breeze rustles the trees. Somewhere nearby. A garage door closes. Ordinary sounds continue. Unaware they are now framing a moment that should have ended already. Detained for what the woman asks quietly. "Standing in my doorway." The word comes next. Uncooperative. And with that single label, the temperature shifts. The street begins to watch. The word hangs in the air. Uncooperative. It's not an accusation. It's a justification. A switch officers are trained to flip when control begins to slip. The woman at the door exhales slowly, deliberately, as if choosing each breath with care. "Officer," she says evenly, "I am cooperating. I'm asserting my constitutional rights. Those are not the same thing." The taller officer straightens, his voice sharpening. "Ma'am, step outside. This will go a lot easier if you comply. Comply with what she asks. You haven't stated a crime. You haven't explained your legal basis." The second officer shifts closer, stopping just short of the threshold. His shadow stretches across the porch, cutting into the light spilling from inside the house. "If you continue to refuse," he says, "you can be detained." The woman does not step back. Detained for what she replies calmly. "Standing inside my own home, a porch light flickers as a breeze moves through the trees. The quiet street holds its breath. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks once, then stops. From across the road, a neighbor's door opens. A phone is raised, its screen glowing softly in the dark. The woman notices it. She doesn't turn. She doesn't acknowledge it. She keeps her eyes on the officers. "I am asking for the legal justification of your demand," she says. "I am not required to provide identification without reasonable suspicion of a crime." The taller officer takes a half step forward, close enough to assert presence. Not close enough to cross the line. We can do this the easy way, he says, lowering his voice. Or the hard way. The words are meant to intimidate. They don't. You are standing at the entrance of my home without a warrant. The woman replies, I am asking you to step back. Red and blue lights pulse across her face, across the white trim of the door, across the badge on his chest, down the block. Another curtain moves. Another phone lights up. The encounter has crossed a line. Not legally yet, but visibly. The street is no longer quiet. It's watching. At that moment, no one on the street knows who she is. Not the officers standing inches from her doorway. Not the neighbors watching from behind glowing screens. Not the people who will eventually replay this moment frame by frame. All they see is a black woman standing in her own doorway being ordered to prove she belongs there. She senses the shift before anyone names it. The way the officers' shoulders square. The way their attention hardens. The way calm questioning is being reinterpreted as defiance. The woman does not raise her voice. She does not argue emotionally. She speaks with careful precision. I am cooperating. She says again. I am asking questions. Those are not the same thing. A neighbor across the street steps fully onto the porch now. Phone raised chest high. Another door opens farther down the block. The quiet street begins to document itself. The woman glances briefly past the officers, noting every detail. The time, the number of patrol cars, the faces now watching. This composure did not come from confidence alone. It came from repetition. Her name is Alicia Monroe. She is 45 years old. She grew up in a narrow brick house on the south side of St. Louis, where dinner was late and conversations were serious. Her mother taught middle school English. Her father worked nights at the postal sorting facility, coming home smelling of ink and paper. Alicia learned early that rules were not always applied evenly. She learned it the first time her father was stopped driving home from work. Hands visible on the wheel. Voice careful. Compliant. She learned it when her mother coached her afterward on how to speak to authority clearly, politely, precisely. You don't argue emotion. Her mother told her. You argue structure. Standing in her doorway now, Alicia follows that lesson instinctively. What crime are you investigating? She asks again. The question lands heavier this time. Because now, the street is listening. Alicia learned early that volume was never power. Clarity was. In school, she didn't dominate conversations. She organized them, while others argued to win. She learned to argue to expose structure. Debate club taught her how to slow a room down. Mock trial taught her how to listen for what wasn't being said. Law review taught her precision. Law school didn't soften her edges. It sharpened them. She gravitated toward constitutional law, toward the narrow spaces where government authority presses hardest against individual rights. Fourth Amendment questions. Probable cause. The legal weight of a threshold. The difference between a request and a command. She clerked for a federal district judge who believed the Constitution was not self-executing. Rights only exist, he told her, when someone insists on them. That idea stayed with her. By her late 30s, Alicia was prosecuting complex federal cases. Organized fraud, public corruption, civil rights violations. She learned how small abuses were dismissed as harmless until stacked together into a pattern no one could deny. She learned how authority often mistook compliance for legitimacy. Standing at her own doorway now, Alicia recognizes the posture instantly. The angle of the shoulders, the proximity without contact, the assumption that escalation will force obedience. This is not fear she feels. It is clarity. Two paths are forming in real time. One leads to de-escalation, the other to consequence. The officers don't realize it yet, but the choice is already in front of them. Back on the porch, one officer clears his throat. "Ma'am," he says, impatience slipping through his control. "Just show us your ID and this will be over." Alicia looks past him, briefly, at the phones recording from across the street, then back at the officers. "This is being documented," she says calmly, "and you are escalating without legal cause." The porch light hums. The night holds, waiting to see which path they choose. The officers have their own histories. Officer Ryan Cole has been on the force for 7 years. He's considered reliable, responsive, the kind of officer supervisors trust to handle routine calls without drama. He follows dispatch exactly as it's given. Suspicious person. Black female. Unknown if resident. That's enough for him to act. Officer Mark Ellis stands beside him. 11 years on patrol. No formal discipline on record, but several informal notes buried in performance reviews. Tends to escalate. Needs reminders on tone. Good instincts. Some supervisors say, too aggressive. Others whisper, neither officer expected resistance tonight. These calls are usually simple. Knock. Question. ID. Move on. What neither of them questions is the assumption underneath the call that someone must prove they belong at their own door. That authority comes first. Explanation later. That calm resistance signals defiance. Alicia's composure unsettles them. Ellis shifts closer to the threshold again, narrowing the space between them. His voice hardens. "Step outside." He repeats, "Now." Alicia doesn't move. "You are escalating without cause," she says evenly. "I am requesting legal justification for your demand." Cole feels the eyes on them now. Phones raised. Faces watching. The street has changed. He lowers his voice, trying a different angle. "Ma'am, we're just trying to clear this up." "Then explain what you're clearing up." Alicia replies. Silence stretches. Ellis's hand drifts closer to his cuffs, not drawing them. Not yet. Just enough to communicate intent. From down the block, a voice breaks in. "This is ridiculous. She hasn't done anything." Ellis snaps his head toward the sound. "Stay back." He barks. Another phone lifts higher. The officers feel it now, the pressure of being seen, but they don't step away. Training has taught them procedures. It has not taught them how to disengage when authority is questioned. Alicia watches the shift carefully. The posture, the breathing, the tightening control. This is the moment she has seen described in reports, in transcripts, in bodycam footage reviewed frame by frame, a moment that looks small, until it isn't. Two paths remain open, and the night is about to force a choice. The threshold matters. Legally, psychologically, symbolically. It's the line where a home ends and government power begins. A boundary the Constitution treats as sacred. One step forward changes everything. Ellis edges closer, his boot now nearly touching the welcome mat. He doesn't cross inside, but he blocks part of the doorway, asserting space that isn't his to claim. Cole shifts to the side, angling his body for control. A practiced formation, familiar, rehearsed. Alicia notices immediately. "You are standing at the entrance of my home without a warrant," she says calmly. "Without probable cause. I am asking you to step back." Ellis doesn't move. Instead, his voice drops. Controlled. Tight. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Alicia keeps her hands visible. Open. Steady. "I am not resisting," she says. I am requesting legal justification. Across the street. A neighbor steps fully into the driveway. Phone raised higher now. Another door opens farther down the block. The quiet suburban street has become a line of witnesses. A dog barks once, then stops. The officers feel the eyes on them. The weight of recording. But momentum has already taken over. Authority, once challenged, is struggling to retreat without losing face. Ellis leans in slightly. Close enough for intimidation. Not close enough for legality. Step back from the door, he warns. Alicia steps back a fraction of an inch, just enough to maintain space. Not enough to surrender ground. This is my home, she says evenly. You do not have the right to control this space. Cole glances at Ellis. A silent exchange. The moment is stretched thin. Hands hover closer to cuffs. Fingers tighten. Breath shortens. This is the point where misunderstandings turn into headlines, where routine calls turn into investigations. The ordinary night feels heavy now. Charged. Alicia remains still, watching every movement, cataloging every word. She knows exactly what this moment is, and she knows it will not disappear quietly. The choice is still there, but the window to choose wisely is closing. The air feels thicker now. Emmett. Heavy. Charged with too many eyes and not enough restraint. Ellis shifts his weight again. Closer than before. Cole moves half a step to the side, positioning himself for what comes next. It's subtle, but deliberate. A posture they've practiced countless times. Alicia sees it. She inhales once. Slow. Controlled. Officer, she says evenly. You are exceeding your authority. Ellis scoffs. You don't get to decide that. No. Alicia replies. The law does. From across the street, someone murmurs. This isn't right. Another phone rises higher, framing the doorway. The badges, the tension. Cole's jaw tightens. He glances briefly at the growing audience, then back at Alicia. Ma'am, he says, trying to reassert control. This is your last chance. Show us your ID. Alicia studies him for a beat, not with anger, with focus, as if committing every detail to record. Then, slowly, deliberately, she moves one hand inside. Not fast, not hidden, measured. Both officers tense instantly. She produces a small leather case. The porch light catches the edge of it as she opens it halfway, just enough for the holographic seal to glint in the night. Ellis leans forward reflexively. Cole squints. The words are clear. United States Department of Justice. For a moment, no one speaks. The momentum falters, not stopped, but disrupted. Confidence drains from posture. Shoulders stiffen. Breathing changes. Ellis straightens slightly. Uncertainty flickering across his face. What is that, he asks. Slower now. Alicia doesn't raise her voice. Those are my credentials, she says. And I am asking you, again, to step back from my doorway. The street is silent. Phones keep recording. The officers realize something has shifted, but not yet how far. Not yet how permanent this moment will be. And somewhere in the distance, approaching headlights begin to wash the street in white. Backup is arriving. So is consequence? Headlights sweep across the street, cutting through the red and blue pulses already filling the night. A patrol car slows, then stops. A door opens. Lieutenant Karen Simmons steps out. 25 years on the job have taught her how to read a scene in seconds. She doesn't rush. She doesn't raise her voice. Her eyes move first, taking in the neighbors. The phones. The officer's posture. The woman standing calmly in her doorway. Then she looks at the credentials. Her expression changes immediately. Not shock. Recognition. She steps closer. Careful not to crowd the threshold. "Ma'am," she says, her tone measured and respectful. "May I see that? Please." Alicia opens the leather case fully now, holding it steady. The seal of the United States Department of Justice reflects the porch light. Her photograph. Her name. Lieutenant Simmons exhales. "I apologize," she says quietly. "We should have verified this sooner." The words land hard. Cole's shoulders drop slightly. Ellis takes an involuntary step back. The space around the doorway finally widening. Alicia nods once. "I will need copies of all incident reports," she says calmly. "Body camera footage. Radio logs. Everything related to this encounter." Simmons doesn't hesitate. "You'll have them," she replies. Then she turns sharply to her officers. "Return any personal property immediately. Notify your supervisor. Begin full written statements." Ellis opens his mouth, then closes it. Color drains from his face. We didn't realize," he starts. "You didn't need to," Alicia says evenly. "You needed legal cause." The phones remain raised. No one speaks. This isn't an argument anymore. It's documentation. The officers step back from the threshold at last. The line is restored. The power in the scene has shifted completely, and everyone on the street can feel it. Nothing that happens next will erase what already occurred, and everyone there knows it. The street doesn't erupt. There are no cheers. No arguments. Just silence. A silence filled with raised phones and the quiet understanding that something irreversible has happened. Alicia steps back inside her home. The door closes gently behind her. The porch light remains on, illuminating an empty threshold that now feels heavier than before. The officers linger for a moment, unsure of where to stand. Their presence feels suddenly exposed. Smaller. Within hours, the footage appears online. A calm woman at her doorway. Officers demanding identification. The word uncooperative. The slow reveal of federal credentials. By morning, it's everywhere. Legal analysts replay the video frame by frame, pausing at the threshold, highlighting the lack of reasonable suspicion, explaining the constitutional protections of the home under the Fourth Amendment. Civil rights attorneys issue statements. Advocacy groups amplify the clip. This is not about her title. One expert says, "It's about what would have happened if she didn't have one." By the end of the day, formal complaints are filed. Unlawful detention, intimidation, abuse of authority. Internal Affairs opens a full investigation. Officers Ryan Cole and Mark Ellis are placed on administrative leave. Their body camera footage is pulled. Radio traffic reviewed. Prior stops examined for patterns that once seemed isolated. The narrative shifts. This is no longer a single incident. It's a window, and the view behind it is uncomfortable. Because the question isn't why this happened to her. It's how often it happens to people who don't have cameras, credentials, or a lieutenant arriving in time. And now, the city has no choice but to answer. The investigation doesn't take long. The evidence is clean, too clean to ignore. Body camera footage confirms what the street recorded. No crime articulated. No reasonable suspicion established. Escalation driven by assumption. Not law. Internal Affairs interviews the officers separately. Their explanations don't align. One describes routine procedure. The other describes officer safety. Neither explains the legal basis. Supervisors review prior encounters. Informal notes that once seemed minor now form a pattern. Moments of escalation. Complaints dismissed. Warnings written softly and filed away. Within weeks, the findings are released. Both officers violated department policy. Officer Ryan Cole receives a formal suspension and mandatory retraining. His supervisors cite failure to de-escalate and improper reliance on vague dispatch information. Officer Mark Ellis faces termination. The department cites repeated escalation, disregard for constitutional limits, and conduct unbecoming of an officer. The union files an appeal. It fails. The video, the timestamps, the witnesses, the law. There is nowhere to hide. City officials announce policy changes shortly after. Mandatory verification protocols before demands for identification. Clear guidance on encounters at private residences. Expanded de-escalation training. Independent oversight for civilian complaints. These are not gestures. They are admissions. Because once the footage went public, the city understood something crucial. This wasn't a public relations problem. It was a constitutional one, and ignoring it would cost far more than accountability ever could. Alicia Monroe does not give interviews. She does not hold a press conference. She does not turn the moment into spectacle, because she understands something the headlines often miss. This story did not end the way it did because the system worked. It ended this way because she had knowledge, witnesses, documentation, and power. If she had been tired, if she had been afraid, if she had stepped outside without questioning, if she had not known the law, this night could have ended very differently. Thousands of people face similar encounters every year without cameras, without credentials, without a lieutenant arriving in time. They comply. They get detained. They get charged. Sometimes, they don't get to go home. That is the part the video cannot show. Alicia has prosecuted cases built on moments just like this, small violations dismissed as misunderstandings until they form a pattern too obvious to deny. She knows accountability is rare, not because wrongdoing is rare, but because leverage is. This is why she did not raise her voice, why she did not argue emotionally, why she documented everything. Calm was not a personality trait. It was a survival skill. And the most unsettling truth of all is this. Justice did not arrive because the officers recognized their mistake. It arrived because they realized who was standing in front of them. And that distinction matters. Under the Fourth Amendment, police do not have the right to demand identification from someone standing inside their own home without reasonable suspicion of a crime. The threshold of a residence is not a suggestion. It is a constitutional boundary. Calm questioning is not resistance. Asserting rights is not obstruction. And authority does not become lawful simply because it is loud. What happened at Alicia Monroe's door is not extraordinary. What followed is, because in this case, power met preparation, bias met documentation, and assumption met consequence. But for every encounter that ends with accountability, there are countless others that end quietly unchallenged, unrecorded, unresolved. That is why knowledge matters, why witnesses matter, why visibility matters. Justice is not automatic. It does not arrive on its own. It has to be insisted upon. The lesson of that quiet suburban night is not about one woman's title. It's about the fragile line between authority and abuse and how easily it can be crossed when no one is watching. The law exists to protect everyone, but it only works when someone knows it, uses it, and refuses to step aside. Even when the knock comes late at night,